And thank you, Nadia. And the recording, you just got a notification. The recording will be housed on TSLIP's YouTube page, and we'll be sharing it after this session as well for any of your colleagues or folks that were not able to attend. So, like I said, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn session, Unlocking Opportunities, Educational Pathways to Skilled Trades for Newcomers. My name is Timbit Iyasu, and I'm a community coordinator with TSLIP, the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership, and I'm very excited that all of you are here today. So before we get started into the session, I'll be reading our land acknowledgement. So I'd like to start by honoring the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activities since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nations, on which I recognize that I am an uninvited guest. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. I would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, and so I honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Thank you. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. We did the welcome, land acknowledgement. I'll be providing just a brief description of the session. Then we'll go into an overview of the labor market in Toronto. Then I'll be passing it over to our presenter, and then we'll leave some space for Q&A, and then we'll close it off. So it'll be about an hour. We should wrap up around 1 o'clock. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the session today is titled Unlocking Opportunities, Educational Pathways to Skilled Trades for Newcomers. So this Lunch and Learn session aims to equip employment service providers working with newcomers with labor market information, specifically educational pathways to skilled trades. The objective is to bring current and local labor market information to folks. It will explore the barriers newcomers may face and how to navigate entering trades that are in high demand. The session will offer actionable insights and guidance around pre-apprentice and apprenticeship programs and how they can contribute to newcomers' success in skilled trades. In recognizing that service providers may not have the capacity to do detailed research into each industry your client is interested in, we hope that this session will provide the information necessary to support your clients on their journey to a specific skilled trade. Okay, so let's start with an overview of the labor market in Toronto, and of course, particularly as it pertains to newcomers. So skilled trades, they are in high demand. So Toronto is experiencing a high demand for skilled trades, particularly in areas such as electricians, carpenters, and heavy-duty equipment technicians. The demand for these roles is driven by ongoing construction projects and infrastructure development in the city. In terms of job vacancies and employment trends, despite economic uncertainties, the demand for skilled talent remains strong. Many employers in Toronto face challenges in filling skilled trade positions, leading to competitive recruitment efforts. So one statistic, and the statistics that I'll be reading out for this session are from the City of Toronto website, their data research maps and research reports. So one of the statistics that I was able to pull is that the employment in Toronto increased by 3.4% from 2022 to 2023, which is adding over 50,000 jobs. The unemployment rate as of May 2024 is 7.9%, which shows a recovery from the pandemic peak. In terms of labor shortages, the labor market in Toronto is notably tight, with a low unemployment to job vacancy ratio, indicating that there are many more job openings that are available for newcomers. This trend is consistent across Ontario, reflecting a broader provincial challenge in recruiting skilled tradespeople. In terms of recruitment challenges, employers in the skilled trade sector are particularly affected by recruitment difficulties, with many reporting that it takes longer to hire now compared to previous years. This is particularly due to the high competition for skilled trade workers and the specific skill set required for these roles. Now moving on to misconceptions and stigma in skilled trades. So skilled trades often suffer from misconceptions and stigma, such as being viewed as perhaps less prestigious as some other jobs. But it's important to address these misconceptions to highlight, the potential of high earning, possible job stability, and numerous opportunities for job advancements in these fields. And now looking at labor market challenges, and our presenter will be going into it in more detail, but I just wanted to provide an overview with some statistics. So in terms of the labor market challenges, one of them being recognition of foreign credentials. And of course, this is something that we hear and talk about a lot in our sector. So many newcomers face significant hurdles in getting their foreign qualifications recognized in Canada. This issue can prevent highly skilled individuals from working in their trained profession, leading to underemployment or forcing them to start over in new careers. So a statistic I was able to pull is studies indicate that only 40% of newcomers with foreign credentials work in their field of expertise within the first 5 years of arrival. Now moving to Canadian work experience, another one that we've discussed, and even as a working group, we've had a session around Canadian work experience. Employers often look for candidates with Canadian work experience, and this is creating a barrier for newcomers who may have extensive experience abroad, but not locally. This preference for Canadian experience can make it difficult for newcomers to secure jobs that match their qualifications and professional backgrounds. Another statistic is nearly 60% of employers cite the lack of Canadian experience as a significant barrier when hiring newcomers. Now moving on to underemployment. Many newcomers work in jobs, such as the gig economy, or looking at the gig economy, that do not match their qualifications or professional backgrounds. So this underemployment can lead to frustration and financial instability as individuals are unable to fully utilize their skills and expertise. So approximately 40% of employed newcomers are working in positions below their skill level, contributing to an underemployment rate significantly higher than the national average. Now moving on to networking and professional connections. So building a professional network is crucial for job searching. Of course, all of you know that as service providers that are supporting newcomers, but newcomers often lack the necessary connections. So networking can be challenging without establishing local contacts, making it harder to learn about job openings and get referrals. So 70% of jobs are filled through networking and referrals, making it a critical component for job searching. Moving on to language barriers and financial constraints. So proficiency in English, while we have, as a working group and within TSLIP, looking at how we can tackle issues like language barriers. It is still a common barrier, so proficiency in English or French is essential for most jobs in Toronto. Lack of language skills can limit job opportunities for newcomers, and financial constraints can also be a significant hurdle in pursuing further education or certification. So around 30% of newcomers cite language barriers as a major obstacle to finding employment, while 25% struggle with the financial burden of requalification and additional training. So by addressing these realistic insights into the labor market in Toronto, it can help newcomers understand both the opportunities and the challenges they may face. So now moving on, in terms of what the whole session is around or is about, around educational pathways to skilled trades, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, William Linton, who is a project manager for Pathways Initiatives at Humber College. He will provide an in-depth presentation on educational pathways to skilled trades, focusing on how newcomers can navigate these opportunities. So I'll stop sharing my screen and please go ahead, Willem.
Thanks very much, Tim. I appreciate everybody coming today, and I'm excited to be here. I'm just going to share my screen.
No problem. The audio is just a little off, but maybe it's potentially me.
What I'm going to speak about today is apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there about both of these.
William, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm not able to hear you too clearly. The audio seems to be a bit muffled.
I'm not sure what I can do to fix it. The volume's up.
Yeah, it sounds, and I know we were okay. Apologies, folks. I know we were okay earlier, but it does sound just a bit muffled.
Is that for everybody, or?
Oh, perfect. I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're good to go. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to attempt to talk about the difference between apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship and the pathways to get there. A little bit about me. I'm 13 years at Seneca College in employment service. I was the manager of co-op and career services for the Faculty of Technology when I left there. The last 13 years, I've been at Humber College, and most recently, as Tinby mentioned, I'm the manager of Pathway Initiatives here at Humber. So I'm responsible for the operations of all of the government-funded training programs, specifically around skilled trades. So most of the programs that I'm responsible for are pre-apprenticeship and pathways programs around skilled trades. And even though I look the way I look, I was 7 years at the Dufferin Peel Catholic School Board in the ELT program, working with foreign trained professionals, 17 consecutive contracts, over 300 clients, where we're trying to help folks bridge that gap between their previous experience and getting into their field here. And again, even though the way I look, I have two mixed children that identify as Black, and yeah, so I'm well versed with all different cultures, to be honest with you, over the 7 years at the school board, and specifically in the Black community here in Toronto and broader. That's just a little bit about me. So a few stats. I'm going to overlap a little bit with what Tinby was saying, but between 2020 and 2029, the construction sector specifically will require 310,000 new workers, and that's because 257,000 of them will retire, and there'll be 83,000 new workers required due to expansion. I don't know if, I think probably some people know this, but Toronto has the most the GTA has the most erected cranes in North America. So more than New York, more than Los Angeles, more than Houston, more than anywhere else in North America, the most construction happening is here in the GTA. By 2026, the largest expansion, again, will be here in the GTA in Southwestern Ontario, with 72,000 people retiring and 23,000 new workers being required due to expansion. Now, that number for retirement is so high because traditionally the skilled trades are run by people that look like me, old white guys. So, and a large percentage of those folks are of my age and will be leaving the industry. So there is a huge demand for new talent to enter into the trades. 50% of the population is female, but less than 1% are actually electricians and plumbers. 29% are landed immigrants, but 84 to 87% of the most popular trades are folks that are not landed immigrants. 30% of the population is racialized, but again, 92% of the trades is non-racialized, and 2.8% of the population is indigenous. And again, the same kind of the similar reflection of stats there. I'm just kind of whipping through these because Timby did cover some of this already. So some of the barriers that are faced by diverse populations for the skilled trade specifically: lack of access to employer networks that Timby had mentioned. It's extremely important to have those networks. And of course, if traditionally these positions are held by folks that look like me, then it's difficult to establish those networks when you do come to Canada. Canadian workplace practices and unwritten rules, huge when you enter the workforce. I mean, in a lot of other countries, a perfect employee is someone who shows up exactly on time, does exactly what they're told, leaves exactly on time. That's a perfect employee. And we all know here in Canada, and just as an example of unwritten rules, that's not the expectation. The expectation here is that you show up early, you stay late, you do what's required. You might do things that are not exactly in your job description. You're looking for showing initiative to take on new challenges. So all of those types of things are things that are barriers as well. Microaggressions in the workplace leading to frustration. I'm sure you're all familiar with those microaggressions that happen. Money, so socioeconomic factors. It costs money to do a pre-apprenticeship program, particularly privately, or if you're interested in joining a union. That limited support system. Often folks do not have a network of people to rely on when they come here. Tokenism, it still exists out there where, you see that a company is primarily homogeneous, but they'll claim, oh no, we got Jerry over there who's not someone who looks like me, so we're not that way. Single parents absolutely have a tough time, because typically in the trades you're looking at a 7 a.m. start time, which is before most daycares even open, and the expectation is that you're going to be on a job site or at your shop by 6:45 to be ready to go out to a job site at 7 a.m. Any of the programs that we have here at Humber, we always say to our participants that, particularly in the trades, 15 minutes early is on time is late, and 15 minutes late is fired. And there's really very little flexibility when it comes to that. And youth, of course, have difficulty accessing employment without previous experience. It's the old catch-22 in every industry, where we need to hire people with experience, but how do you get experience if you won't hire me? Those are some of the barriers that are faced by diverse populations, including newcomers. So apprenticeships, most people, when they think about apprenticeship, they think about carpenter, plumber, electrician, and that's it. Well, in reality, there are 100 and something registered trades, regulated trades in Ontario. They fall into 4 categories: the construction sector, where you do find those more traditional ones like electrician, plumber, and carpenter. There's the industrial sector, which includes, manufacturing primarily. So you've got things in there like facilities mechanic, you've got draftsperson, tool and die maker. The number one in-demand trade in Canada is millwright. And most people have no clue what a millwright is or does, including myself, until we started running this program. These are the people that, another common term for them are industrial maintenance mechanics. They're the people that actually keep the machines and manufacturing environments running. So troubleshooting, installation, calibration, preventative and reactive maintenance. That is the number one in-demand trade in Canada. Motive power is another sector. That's anything to do with something that moves. So cars, motorcycles, helicopters, airplanes. And then the service sector, where there's several trades in there, like childcare worker, baker, chef. They're there. So when people are considering trades, it's important that they do a little bit of research. Like I understand that, everybody knows what a carpenter, plumber, and electrician are. But to give you an example, I was mentioning to Tinby before we started that 2 years ago when I only ran five online information sessions for our electrician pre-apprenticeship program. And I had 7,000 pre-registered participants for those info sessions. And about 2,500 of them actually showed up for 36 spots. And we run our program once a year. So it's extremely competitive. When you look at those trades that people are most familiar with, I would certainly encourage you to tell your clients to do a little bit of research into what are the most in-demand trades. Okay. And particularly with newcomers, I realize a lot of folks that come here have engineering backgrounds. The millwright really suits them well because it's a little bit of electricity, it's a little bit of plumbing, it's a little bit of hydraulics. It's an excellent opportunity. To give you an example of that one, I typically only get about 100 people that apply for that one, even though it's the most in-demand trade. Last year, I only did in-person information sessions for electrician. I still had 800 applications for 36 spots. So I would certainly encourage folks to do some research before they select which one they're most interested in, and to really think about what is involved. The trades is not for everyone. The trades is hard work, and a lot of folks that have an engineering background, they might think, oh, I'm an electrical engineer back home, well, I'll be an electrician here. It's very, very different work. It's very physical. It's demanding. It's long hours. It's on your feet all the time. And often folks are not used to that type of work if they have an engineering background. And I can give you an example of someone that was in our electrician program. We supported them to gain employment with a company. First day on the job, they loved it. They were doing exactly what they wanted. Next day on the job, they were asked to do something that was a little heavier, carrying some things around, and like, oh, I'm not really interested in doing that. Can I do what I did yesterday? And no, they couldn't do what they did yesterday, and they needed to do what they needed to do today. They refused to do it, and they were fired immediately. So it's not the warmest and fuzziest of work environments often. And the language barrier that Timby had touched on before as well is extremely important if there are language barriers, and primarily because of health and safety concerns. Like trades environments are dangerous environments. Construction sites, manufacturing facilities, working with electricity, working with machines that, if you're unclear or not paying attention, you can lose a limb fairly quickly. It's extremely important that the language abilities are up to what they need to be to ensure a safe work environment. So just some things to think about. Some pathways to apprenticeship. There's the traditional apprenticeship route, which I'm going to speak about in much more detail. A lot of these are high school options, specialist high skills majors, Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, dual credit programs. Those are all accessible through the high schools. There are college full-time certificate programs at every community college in Ontario, including the GTA. There are pre-apprenticeship programs, and there's union or industry approved training. I'm going to speak about each of these. So the traditional route to become an apprentice, this is where there's the most misconception out there. There is only one way to become a licensed tradesperson, and that's to become an apprentice. And there's only one way to become an apprentice, and that's to get a job. Step one is to get a job, work for 3 or 4 months, show that employer that you are, or not you, but your clients are the type of employee that everyone is supposed to be. Someone who shows up on time every day for work. Someone who gets along with people, communicates well, works hard when they're at work, looks for more work to do, learns quickly. Those are all of the things that employers in every industry are looking for, but particularly in the trades, because an apprenticeship is a 3 to 5 year commitment for an employer. Even though the individual doesn't need to stay with that same employer, the registration process is something that, those spots are valuable to the employer. So there is no training that makes someone an apprentice. And that's the common misconception. They think by coming to a pre-apprenticeship program at Humber or taking a certificate program at George Brown, that makes them an apprentice, but it does not. Any training that is done prior to getting a job just provides some theoretical background and some hands-on skills that'll allow them to market themselves to an employer to get that first job. So again, first step in becoming an apprentice is get a job, work for 3 or 4 months. Then the company decides if they're going to register the individual or not. They almost never will hire them as an apprentice right away for all the reasons that I just said. And this is common across every industry. The number one challenge for employers, and I'm sure even the number one challenge for you in your work environments when you're registering people for workshops, etc., is for people to show up. Period. Skilled trades employers are very accommodating in terms of teaching, but the number one thing for them is people that will show up every day on time. You'll learn everything you need to know about becoming a skilled tradesperson on the job. 85% of the learning for an apprenticeship is on the job. Only 15% is done in the classroom. So again, get a job, work for 3 or 4 months. If they become registered as an apprentice, they'll work for the balance of the year, and then they'll be invited by the ministry to do their level 1 apprenticeship training. And now, depending on the trade, the length of an apprenticeship could be 3 to 5 years. So it could be 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years with in-class training approximately every year of experience. So that the level 1 experience, they get it after a year of being on the job. And they work for another year, go for the level 2, work for another year, go for the level 3. And then they're completing all the skills that are required to do a certificate of qualification exam. That's what everyone in Ontario needs to do to become a licensed tradesperson, no matter what the trade is. Okay. So that's the most common question I get, and most common misconception is that folks think that by doing training in a pre-apprenticeship program that they become an apprentice, and that is not the case. That all they're doing is preparing to get skills to market themselves to get a job. Very important as well when you're calling a college or wherever you're calling for information, that if you're calling about pre-apprenticeship, that you make sure you say pre-apprenticeship, because pre-apprenticeship training and apprenticeship training are completely different. It's a completely different pathway. When somebody starts asking questions about apprenticeship training, the assumption is that the person is already a registered apprentice. The only people that can do apprenticeship training are registered apprentices, and they get invited by the ministry to do that training over the course of their apprenticeship. Pre-apprenticeship programs, you do not have to be a registered apprentice to take those. Okay, so when you ask questions about pre-apprenticeship, then you'll get taken down the right path to get the information that you need. So I spend quite a bit of time on the traditional route because there is a lot of misconception out there about how to become a skilled tradesperson, and it's not complicated. It's very simple. Step 1 is get a job, employer register you, and then you're on your way. In terms of the actual apprenticeship, the company that registers the individual, they don't have to stay with that company for the entire time. They can move around. And it's important that once someone gets their foot in the door, they recognize, okay, what are my opportunities here? Because over the course of an apprenticeship, they'll be required to complete all the skills that are required to be a licensed tradesperson. And they receive a skills booklet, and they have to be signed off on over the period of the entire apprenticeship by a licensed tradesperson. So someone might find that after a year, they got registered, which is fantastic, but they can only get a certain set of skills. It might be a requirement that they move to another company to be able to complete all the skills that they need, and that's okay. The apprenticeship agreement is good forever. Okay, so once someone's licensed as an apprentice, they don't have to stay with that company, but they do stay as an apprentice even if they change companies. If they don't get hired as an apprentice right away, which they likely will not, if after say 6 months or 8 months, they do get registered by that company, then all of the hours they put in will count towards their apprenticeship hours. If for whatever reason they're working for a company that, they work for 4, 6, 8 months, and then they have to go to another company that registers them, then their hours will not count. Okay, so that's an important thing to realize as well. That doesn't mean those hours are wasted, because probably those hours they put in with one employer that did not register them, that's what's going to get them registered at another employer. So it isn't time wasted by any stretch of the imagination. So what's pre-apprenticeship? We're going to talk about public or private, community-based training, and unions. These are all old flyers, so don't pay attention at all to the dates or anything on these flyers. It's just an example. There are private and there are public pre-apprenticeship programs. Public pre-apprenticeship programs are typically delivered by colleges, or they're delivered by agencies like your own that have a partnership with a college, or that is typically the delivery partner. We have relationships with Peel Multicultural Council, with Skills for Change, with YWCA, where they actually have done a funding proposal to have a pre-apprenticeship program, but Humber is the delivery partner for it. So typically with these, the questions you need to ask about any of these pre-apprenticeship programs that are out there: what is the cost associated with them? Okay, with any of the funded programs, the cost is usually zero. And as well, everything that's required to complete that program will be included. So there's no tuition for Humber, for our electrician pre-apprenticeship program or millwright pre-apprenticeship program. No tuition. We provide their safety boots and all their safety equipment, clothing that they wear while they're here, all of their, like a starter kit of tools that they'll need, as well as a textbook, all provided at no cost. And what kind of program supports are there is another question you need to ask. So, you know, for most programs, there is some financial assistance that can go towards transportation, and also for employer incentives, financial incentives for employers after the program. And most public programs also do include employment support. No service provider should or will likely guarantee placements, because you have no idea what's going to happen afterwards. And you know how it goes. I'm sure even with your, I think I started to say this before, like, you know, I have people look me dead in my eye every day saying, Bill or William, I can't wait to start your program tomorrow. See you then. And then I never hear from them again, ever. No email, no voicemail, no text, no response, ever. So, you know, you never really know how a person is until you actually are supporting them in that employment side. So there's a lot of different variables that go into it. But it's important to ask what those program supports are. Is there a paid placement or post-program support? You know, again, an important question to ask. And is the organization a training delivery agent? So a training delivery agent is a designation that's provided by the ministry that allows them to grant them their level 1. I'm trying to think of how to say this. They would be exempt from their level 1 training if they were to become an apprentice, if they do their training at a training delivery agent. For example, Humber is a training delivery agent for carpenter, horticulture, electrician, anyone who does a pre-apprenticeship program in one of our programs or any of the college programs. Typically, the training is identical to the level 1 apprenticeship training. And if an individual completes the program, gets a job, gets registered as an apprentice, gets invited by the ministry after a year of work experience to do their level 1, they would be exempt from that level 1 training because of what they've done here. We are not a training delivery agent for general machinist or millwright. So in that case, the training, if an individual gets a job, gets registered as an apprentice, once they're invited for their level 1 training by the ministry after a year of experience, they can apply to be exempt based on what they've taken, the training they've had, but there's no guarantee. But the worst case scenario is that they do the training again, they've already had an introduction to it by doing it one time through, so it's not really that big a deal. Now, all of the things I've talked about are for a public program. Private programs, the biggest difference between them and a public program is the cost. They tend to cost a lot of money, between $12,000 and $15,000, typically for a pre-apprenticeship program. And the private institutions tend to make big promises, like guaranteeing placements, and it's just not realistic. So it's very important that folks do some good research before they enter into a private pre-apprenticeship program, just to be clear on what exactly that training is going to provide to them at the end of the road, what kind of program supports there are, what is the cost, what is the post-program support. All of those things are extremely important when it comes to the private colleges or private institutions that offer pre-apprenticeship. If you're going for a pre-apprenticeship at any of the community colleges in Ontario, or particularly in the GTA, Centennial, Seneca, Humber, George Brown, there's typically a designated person that's 100% responsible for post-program support and employment support, and there's no cost associated with it. So community programs are a little bit different. They tend to be exposure, and I'm sure some of your organizations operate or deliver these types of programs, where it's not specifically apprenticeship training, but it's exposure to a cluster of certificates or basic exposure to some trades that will help them down the road. So typically, you're looking at getting your WMIS, maybe forklift, maybe whatever certification might be offered. Again, questions to ask are, is it an apprenticeship curriculum or not? Typically, it will not be. And is there some employment or placement support afterwards? That's important to ask as well. That doesn't mean just because it's not a pre-apprenticeship program doesn't mean it's not a good program. Often, the community-based programs are good for folks that think they might want to get into the trades, but maybe are not sure what trade, or don't have a lot of hands-on experience. We give them some basic exposure to see if they even like it. So it's really kind of a test run to have a taste of what it might be like, and then decide what the next step might be, which might be a pre-apprenticeship program, which might be doing further training, which might be going directly into workforce, whatever is good for the individual. Unions also offer pre-apprenticeship programs. Again, the questions to ask: what is the curriculum? Typically, it would be identical to the level 1 apprenticeship training. They typically do have a paid placement upon completion, but there is a cost associated with it typically, but it's not like the private institutions. It's not like $12,000 or $15,000. It would be, in the, $100 or $200 maybe at the most. So there's not a lot of cost. There's pros and cons to going with the union, but it is important to advise your clients that they should go one way or the other. Either go the union route or don't go the union route, because in Ontario, colleges and unions do not play well together. Colleges do not recognize union training, and union training does not recognize college programs. So in almost every other province, they have a very good relationship, and they have agreements with each other that they recognize each other's trainings. But for whatever reason, in Ontario, and particularly the GTA, there's a serious divide. And a lot of folks, if depending on the advice they get, if they talk to a union person, then a union person will tell you that the union is the only way to go. Okay, that's because that's what they know, but it's not the only way to go. There's no problem getting experience or getting hired by a non-union employer. The big difference typically is that the union pay scale is dictated, and typically the starting wage is a little bit higher than in a non-union company. But that doesn't mean that the non-union company won't pay what a union company will pay after the individual has proven that they are valuable to the employer. So if somebody goes in there, they're a fantastic employee, they do all the things that we talked about, show up every day, learn quickly, work hard, help each other out, get along with people, and they can do the work, and they prove to be productive for the employer, that employer will likely pay them on the same level as a union employee would be paid, because they really do not want to cycle people in and out. That's why often it's very difficult for them to make the decision to register somebody. On top of the fact that the province has ratios established, that there has to be a certain number of licensed journey people or licensed tradespeople within a company. That dictates the number of registered apprentices they can have. And right now, for most of the trades, the ratio is 1-to-1, which makes it very difficult for employers, to register multiple people. So they're looking for the best people to register as apprentices. People, and when I say the best, I don't mean the smartest. I don't mean the people with the most experience. It really is all of those intangibles, all those things that are the soft skills, being reliable, being dependable, getting along with people. Those are the things that are the most important to any employer. And then, of course, if you've been involved in a union, when it comes to layoffs, that's the other downside. Everybody has a different experience. One of my colleagues, her son is an electrician, went through the union, beautiful experience. Did the pre-apprenticeship program, got a placement, stayed on all the way through to becoming a licensed electrician, no glitches. I have another colleague, my manager actually, who her son got into the crane operators union. He worked for about 6 months and then he was laid off and didn't work for another 2 years. So the thing about unions, as we all know, is there's only one thing that matters in a union when it comes to employment, and that's seniority. So I could be the worst employee you've ever seen. I could be late every day, extend my breaks, get in fights with my colleagues all the time, right? Tinby could be the best employee ever. She does all the right things. She helps out everybody. She gets along. She's a hard worker. But when it comes to layoff time, if I was hired one day before Tinby, I keep my job. She loses hers. No discussion whatsoever. So, lots of people like that union environment. There are pros to it, but there are also cons to it. So it's important that you let folks know that there is more than one way to go when it comes to talking about becoming an apprentice and getting into the trades. So I'll talk a little bit about Humber now. There's full-time certificate programs. Our full-time certificate programs are typically 8 months or 2 semesters. We offer all of our trades full-time certificate programs are typically called our techniques programs. So you're looking at plumbing techniques, electrical, heating and refrigeration, home renovation, industrial woodworking, cabinet making, welding, millwright, urban arboriculture, and carpentry and renovation techniques. Tuition is somewhere in the neighborhood of just under $2,000, I believe, per semester. It'll vary slightly depending on the tools that are required and equipment that are required, but you're looking at less than $4,000 for the program. And obviously folks will be eligible for student loans, OSAP, bursaries, all that kind of thing. To apply for these programs, you do it like you would any other full-time college program through OCASI or as a mature student, and that's the way to go for those. I guess I didn't mention anything about the application process for pre-apprenticeship program, but actually I'm going to get to that right now. So these are the full-time certificate programs that Humber offers, and I'd encourage everyone to check out humber.ca and just put in skilled trades, and you'll see all the programs that we offer. There might be new offerings that I don't have on here, but this is typically the one. Welding is quite unique. I just wanted to bring a little attention to that. Welding is not so much, you can become an apprentice welder, but it's not required to have an excellent living. Welding is more about what certifications you have. You get certifications or what they call tickets from the Canadian Welding Bureau. So an employer might hire someone in a manufacturing environment without any credentials for welding and teach them and allow them to practice on the job. And then they can do the CWB exam for whatever that particular kind of welding. Typically, it's stick welding, but there is a certificate or a certification for stick welding for flat welding, vertical, horizontal, overhead. Once an individual does that CWB exam for whatever particular kind of welding they have, then they have what's called a ticket, or they have that certification. And the more tickets someone has in the welding industry, the more opportunities there will be for them. And the welding is the one trade that really the apprenticeship is not required for you to have the same type of a career that someone who is a registered apprentice and becomes a licensed welder. So it's more about the tickets that they get or the certifications that they get. All of the trades, typically you're looking at starting at around $25 to $30 an hour as a level 1 apprentice, or as somebody who starts brand new. That's what you're typically looking at. Might be a little lower some places, might be a little higher some places. And over the course of the apprenticeship, you'll get up to $50 to $60 an hour. So, I mean, if you do some simple math, $50 an hour times 40 hours a week times, let's call it 48 weeks in the year, give yourself a month off. It's a pretty big number. And that doesn't include overtime. That doesn't include the fact that, I mean, if any of you know anyone who is a tradesperson, you know that they have the ability to make money on the side. They do jobs for cash all the time. I have friends that are tradespeople, If they want to make $1,500 on a weekend, easy. There's lots of people out there that I think are like me. Well, not like me. I'm one of the worst examples. I'll hire somebody to change a light bulb. So, but there's lots of people out there that are not that handy. And if you've ever had to call a plumber, it's $300 for them just to show up at your door, and then it goes from there. So, like the financial stability that's offered through a career in the trades is significant. If people are looking to support a family, start a family, buy a place to live, I mean, being a licensed tradesperson, you will more than adequately fulfill the financial needs that are required to have those things. Should just want to point that out. Pre-apprenticeship programs at Humber. Right now, we've only got 2 that are coming up. That's our horticulture technician program, which is starting in September of 2024, and our electrician pre-apprenticeship program, which is starting in October of this year, 2024. Typically, we've already had our millwright general machinist program. It's underway right now. And we have a general carpentry program that's underway right now that we're a delivery partner for Skills for Change. But these are the 2 that are coming up at Humber. In terms of the application process for any of the programs at Humber, I would encourage you just to Google Humber pre-apprenticeship. Again, make sure you're Googling pre-apprenticeship, not apprenticeship, because apprenticeship will take you in a completely different direction. So if you Google Humber pre-apprenticeship, you'll come to our page. Step 1 to applying to any of our programs is to register for and attend an information session. It's not like full-time college programs. These programs are not full-time college programs. They're government-funded training programs that are delivered by the college. So the application process is completely different. The application process, essentially for all of our programs, comes through me. So you attend an information session. I just want some commitment from people that they can do that. Commit to attending an information session, listening to a 20-minute presentation. Request an application from me. They do 2 online assessments, one for reading comprehension, one for math. And then the top math scores typically are the folks that we select for interviews. And the interviews are very casual, 15 minutes maximum. All we're looking for, and me in particular, is that someone has put a little bit of thought into why they've applied to the program. I have a dozen calls a day from people that don't even know why they're calling me. And I know it's confusing out there. There's lots of different programs, lots of different names, but it's important that folks do just a tiny bit of research. If the first question in the interview is, why have you applied for this program? If somebody says that, I'd like new skills and I'd like to acquire new skills, and I think new skills are good and I'm ready to get some new skills, that says nothing to me. Okay. They have to say to me that, well, in my home country, I did this. I know it's very different, but since I've come here, I've done a little bit of research. I see it's a high demand trade. I have some friends that are doing this. I know what kind of money is available. I think it would be a good fit for me. I like working with my hands. I'm not afraid of hard work. That's the kind of thing that they need to say. They don't need to have experience, but they need to have put in a little bit of thought into why they've actually applied for one of our programs. And it's myself and my manager that do the interviews, sometimes just myself. So that's what they need. And then the rest of the interview is simple. What kind of experience do you have? What kind of trades experience do you have? What would you do if someone made a derogatory comment in a group chat? How would you handle that? Are you fully available to attend the program? And that's the interview, basically. So it's not a high pressure environment when it comes to the interview. I know lots of folks get a little freaked out by the interview process, but it's really casual. I look harsh and sound harsh, but my boss always tells me I'm smushy on the inside, and I am. And for any of our programs, experience is not the criteria we're looking for. We're looking to give people opportunities that would not normally have opportunities. So highest priority is to underrepresented communities, whether you're racialized, female, newcomer, LGBTQ, low income, transitional housing, conflict with the law. Those are all things that people think might be a negative when you're trying to apply for things. For us, it's a positive. If you tell me you live in a shelter and you like working with your hands, you're in the program, because I want to help you. If you're telling me you're a newcomer who's racialized, who's female, who likes to work with their hands, knows some people that are in the trades, really good chance that you're going to be getting into our program. Every program has a different number of applicants, so Electrician by far is the most competitive one. Like I said, last year I had 800 applications for 36 spots. So I would encourage people to look at other trades as well. In terms of age requirements, most of the funding out there is for youth, and the government identifies youth typically as 30 years of age and under. Our electrician program is 35. For our electrician program, there's no flexibility. They must be under 35 years of age. For the horticulture technician, it's for low-income women, and there is no age category. For any other programs that we offer, often we have a little bit of flexibility, but that's why they come to the information session, because I'll let them know exactly what the criteria is and if there is some flexibility with the age. Because I know often folks are outside of that youth category, but they do still have opportunities in our programs, but it really depends on the program, and they have to come to the info session to get that info from me. The other program that we offer, that we deliver ourselves, is called the Pathways to the Trades. This is more like an exposure program that I talked about. So we actually just received approval for the funding, and we don't have dates set yet, but if you check our website in August, we should have the dates for the programs and the information session dates up on our website. This is a program that provides exposure to a cluster of trades within an industry. So traditionally, we've run residential construction, which gives basic exposure to plumbing, electrician, and framing. We run industrial, which gives basic exposure to welding and machining. We've run landscaping, which gives basic exposure to horticulture and arboriculture. Horticulture is plants, arboriculture is trees, and the other one is landscaping, and carpentry. So we run a carpentry program which gives exposure to cabinet making and finished carpentry. So the goal of these programs is there's no certification that they get from them, no certificate, but it gives them an opportunity to try out, as I said, a cluster of trades within an industry just to see if they like it. And if they like it, then the choice for the next steps is up to them. Maybe it's further education full-time, maybe it's a pre-apprenticeship program, maybe it's directly into the workforce. Maybe they decide, wow, this isn't for me. I never want to see this kind of an industry again. That all of those outcomes are okay. It's again 100% government funded. This program is actually a paid program. So they do receive minimum wage just for attending 30 hours of classes a week. But the age requirement is 30 and under, and there is no flexibility with the age requirement. This program is also very well funded with wraparound supports. So if an individual has financial need, like we can provide them with groceries, support for a Presto card, if they're behind in their rent, behind in their phone bill, it's very well funded for wraparound support. So this program is a great option for folks that are under 30 years of age and are not really sure what they'd like to do, but think they might want to be in the trades. Our Pathways to the Trades program is an excellent option for folks. I think that's all I had to talk about. I'm getting a little bit wiser in my old age. I did have my email address in blue, which was not a great move on a blue background or purple background. So that is my email address, william.linton@humber.ca. Timby has my mobile as well. I have no problem with folks giving me a call. I have no problem with folks reaching out to me by email. I'm happy to do this presentation at any of your organizations for your clients if you're interested. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has moving forward. Anybody has questions now?
Yeah, there's a few in the chat, but first I wanted to say thank you so much for that detailed presentation. It gave a lot of information. I hope folks found it useful. So we right now have 3 questions. The first one is from Farheen, and it says, I'm still a bit confused about the role of unions in trades and the control they have on people / employers in the industry, especially when it comes to barring or allowing access to trades. Would you
Well, they
speak
don't
to?
have control of the industry. I mean, there are trades and there are union employers and there's non-union employers. But the unions have the right and the ability to put whatever criteria they want on people that they hire, just like any organization does. So they don't stop people from getting into the trades, but you do have to meet their requirements. So it's not, they don't control anything. It seems like it, but they don't.
Thank you. The next question we have is, do you accept refugee claimants with valid work permits to the pre-apprenticeship programs at Humber?
No, the government's very specific about their funding. They do not like to give funding to folks that may not stay in the country. If they are a refugee claimant that is awaiting a hearing, then no, they would not be eligible. If they have had their hearing and they've been confirmed or conferred as a protected person, no problem. But typically, if they have a social insurance number that starts with 9 or a work permit, they would not be eligible. Often the work permits specify on it that they're not allowed to do any kind of vocational training while they are under that valid work permit.
Thank you for sharing that. The eligibility requirements is always something that comes up in these discussions.
No problem.
Yeah. And then the last question I have here is, will international experience or training help?
Not really. A little bit, because they do have, you know, that's where the interview would come in. But if it's a barrier when they like having the experience in their own country and then coming into our program and help them to establish those networks, et cetera, then yeah, that would be a good thing. But if you're a licensed, you know, electrician somewhere, or a licensed carpenter, or a licensed whatever, then in my mind, I'd rather give an opportunity to someone who does not have any experience to be in our programs, to gain that basic exposure, that basic experience, to help them out. Because in theory, someone who is licensed, really all they're missing here is usually a language requirement and knowledge of the code. That's the most important thing when it comes to tradespeople from other countries, because construction in Canada is very different than construction in other countries. Typically, the construction in other countries is concrete based, whereas here it's more, you know, lumber, wooden, you know, framing and steel. So a lot of times the code is very different from country to country, and that's where people are lacking, is that knowledge of the code.
Thank you for answering that question. We are at 1 p.m., but I just wanted to give folks any last minute questions. If you'd like, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. If not, then we can end the session here, but I'll give folks a minute.
And you can always reach out to me directly. I have no problem answering any, you know, if you email me, if it's a question that seems like it's more than an email, I'll just give you my number and say, give me a call anytime and we can have a discussion. But if it's something simple for me to answer an email, I'm happy to do that. I am on vacation until July 8th at the moment, but you know, I am, but I'm not. So I still monitor my emails and my voicemail, but you might not hear back to me quite as quickly over the next couple of weeks, but I'll always get back to you. If you do decide to call me, do not leave a voicemail. I'll almost never listen to it, but I do return all of my missed calls pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I see Marcy. Yeah.
Yes, I just want to say thank you, William. It's great. I've been involved with the trades training program for over 2 years. I believe that you are very knowledgeable. I definitely get in touch with you if a question comes up. I feel that you are a great resource. Just wanted to say thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
Okay, great. So we'll end the session here. I want to say again, thank you everybody for attending today's session. I hope you found the information valuable and insightful. And as William said, you can always reach out to him if you have any questions. And of course, you can always reach out to me. It's in the outreach. My email is there, community@torontolip.com, if you have any questions around TSLIP's work with the Employment Working Group. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, William.
Thank you.
Thank you.
William.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.